It's the boy, Bubba, let's coming through. Hella clutch, flawless, can't be touched. It's your boy, Bubba, let's. Yeah, I need that hot take. I need the truth and everything that is not fake. So tell me who's the GOAT, I'll tell you who's not great. And which team always make you go right way. Yeah, hold on.
And welcome back to another episode of the Bubba Let's Sports Podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Bubba Let's, as always, and this is episode 120 of the podcast, a Cowboys free agency update for you. We did the roundup earlier this week, so if you haven't checked that out, go on the YouTube channel or go on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, doesn't matter. It'll be up there where we talked about the recent signing of Gerald McCoy and all the other updates going on in free agency for the Dallas Cowboys. This is just a further point to that episode, an update of the other signings that happened later on in the week that we didn't get to do on that episode, and just a quick little update before we start getting into more of the other free agency market signings around the NFL. We're going to do that in a couple days. We'll probably do them tomorrow, but this is the second episode of today, and this is going to be dedicated to the Dallas Cowboys. I appreciate the Cowboys News Twitter account for following me last night. They have like 60,000 followers, which is awesome, and now they're following me, so I've made it, people. That's going to do it for the Bubba Let's Sports Podcast. I'm out of here. I made it. No, we're done. We're done. Right? Nah. We ain't done here. We got a lot to talk about. You gotta troll the trollers, All right, people. Let's talk about it. All right, free agency update. First, that I wrote down is going to be Xavier Su'a-Filo, and I honestly think that this is actually going to be one of the biggest losses for the Dallas Cowboys in free agency this year, along with Byron Jones. The big names will obviously be up there in a lot of people's minds, a lot of Cowboys fans and NFL fans around the league. But Xavier Su'a-Filo is one of my favorite players on the Dallas Cowboys, or was one of my favorite players, because of the fact that he didn't stand out on the depth chart. He wasn't a guy that you saw and said he's like the most important offensive lineman. He's not the most important player on the Dallas Cowboys. He's just a nice little touch to it, a nice little feature on that stacked offensive line. But he was one of the reasons why that offensive line was so stacked. It was the fact that he was depth in that left guard position. And a lot of people will say, well, I mean, it's Connor Williamson's position. And then they also did sign Connor McGovern. So that's another piece to the left guard position that they might use in the future, now with a lot of these guys getting a little bit older up there in age. But to me, when Connor Williams did go out this past season, and really for the last couple years, Xavier Su'a-Filo for me was a big key to that offensive line. When Connor went out with that season-ending injury, it was Xavier Su'a-Filo coming in and having to take over, and a lot of people didn't look at the starting lineup. They didn't look at the depth chart and say, well, you got Tyron Smith, you got Travis Frederick, Zach Martin, Lyle Collins, and then there's Xavier Su'a-Filo. I credit a lot of the success that the Cowboys had in protecting Dak Prescott to Xavier Su'a-Filo. When you're talking about Tyron Smith, who on that left side of the field, he did have some injuries, back injuries, knee injuries, elbow injuries. He's dealt with it all throughout his NFL career. So giving some help to Tyron Smith was very important. And Xavier Su'a-Filo was a big reason why that was still successful in giving Dak Prescott time to throw, giving Zeke some gaps, some holes to run through. And this is a huge loss. So he agrees to sign with the Cincinnati Bengals for 3 years at left guard. Now what's left is going to be Connor Williams coming back from injury, a second-year Connor McGovern. And I'll be honest, when I was looking up like the depth chart and I was remembering Connor McGovern, I was looking up just like his stats, where he came from, Penn State and all that. And then a center came up named Connor McGovern, and I was like, did the Cowboys get rid of Connor McGovern in only his second year of being in the NFL? It's like, that's ridiculous. That can't be the case, and they don't look like each other from the pictures I see. The other Connor McGovern plays for the Denver Broncos and just got signed by the New York Jets. So I was like, oh my God, this is bad. This is horrible. Turns out there's two Connor McGoverns in the NFL. I'm not going to say that's a very uncommon name, but McGovern, I've only heard that name with these two players. And let alone that their first name is Connor. McGovern is spelled the same way. Connor's spelled the same way. I was confused as shit. So, don't worry about the New York Jets signing Connor McGovern. It's going to be the Cowboys and their third string left guard in Connor McGovern that we're talking about. Now, there's also Brandon Knight, who did have some starts at left guard and did not play particularly well. And that's where Xavier Su'a-Filo, for me, really came in, not having a lot of snaps with the first team, and came in. You didn't hear his name a lot because he didn't give up a lot. It's just credited to the offensive line in general. It's not just one guy. They talk about Travis Frederick, Zach Martin, Tyron Smith. Those guys are big-name guys that have been a cornerstone of the Dallas Cowboys for so many years that some people forget about the other ones. And left guard, for me, has always been somewhat of an issue since Connor Williams was drafted, due to the fact that Connor Williams has not lived up to the potential of what the Cowboys expected him to be at that position. Now, he can play left tackle, he can play right tackle, and he can play guard as well. His natural position is left guard or left tackle position, like he played in Texas. So they moved him over to left guard because they don't need a left tackle. They don't need a right tackle. They need guards. And Zach Martin at the right guard, you're good on that. Travis Frederick at center, you're good. You can learn from him. So left guard's the only real position at the offensive line where I have worries about the Dallas Cowboys. And getting rid of Xavier Su'a-Filo, that's a little tough. I would like to see the Cowboys try out more of Connor McGovern rather than Connor Williams going into the next season. Another agreement to sign was going to be Anthony Brown. He's gonna re-sign for 3 years with the Dallas Cowboys. To me, Anthony Brown is the worst cornerback that the Cowboys have. When you look at it from top to bottom, and you have Chidobe Awuzie, they got rid of Byron Jones, obviously. They got Chidobe Awuzie, who's a big drop off from Byron Jones. Then you have Jordan Lewis, who has the most upside out of any corner on that depth chart for the Dallas Cowboys, and he's improved tremendously over the last year, now getting some snaps, now getting some starts in the secondary. Chris Richard really messed up on that aspect, and that's probably one of the biggest reasons why Matt McCarthy didn't carry over Chris Richard into the coaching staff this year. Plus, he already had it in mind, like who he wanted. So Jordan Lewis created some turnovers, just particularly smart in a lot of plays that I talked about throughout the year in reviewing a lot of the Cowboys games. Jordan Lewis was a big part of that. And then you have CJ Goodwin, who they just re-signed as well to a 1-year, $1 million contract, who plays a lot more special teams. I would like to see him more on the secondary part itself. When he was on the field, not really anything he had to do other than zone coverage, so you really couldn't determine whether or not that player is good to go for the upcoming years with the new coaching staff. I think C.J. Goodwin does have more upside than Anthony Brown because I've seen more than enough from Anthony Brown. And with Al Harris, Maurice Linguist, I'd say that's kind of like a project they can use or try with C.J. Goodwin to see how much they can get out of him as well now that he's learning a new system. I'm guessing here, and my reaction, my opinion on Anthony Brown is Harris and Linguist have an eye for Anthony Brown. They must have seen something in him or must have possibly said, look, they played under a terrible, terrible scheme with Rod Marinelli and Chris Richard, that how can you judge whether or not they are a solid cornerback when they really were playing two different types of schemes at the same time? They would run one man-to-man coverage on one side of the field and play zone on the other. That is for me, that makes no sense unless you are perfect at it, and the Cowboys were far from perfect from doing that scheme, and their whole defensive scheme in general was not up to par and updated enough for a lot of these other teams to know what they're doing. It was predictable. It was basic. There was no blitzing. There was no shadowing. There was no hiding what you're going to do. It was once you got up to that line, you know exactly what they're going to do. They're either going to blitz or they're going to back up and play zone. That's all they're going to do. So you can know where to find those gaps, where to find those openings for the receivers, or you can run the ball down their throat because they're not going to rush players. They're going to go with their 3 up front. They're going to rush those people, and they're going to play zone all around. That gives the running backs easy room to run, and if they can break the first wave of defenders, then boom, all you have to do is beat Jeff Heath and break a tackle. That's going to be easy enough, right? So with Harris and Lindquist coming in, I'm guessing here, excuse me, I'm guessing here that they are looking into Anthony Brown and seeing something in him that we don't see, to see if there is more potential and more to him than just a basic, underwhelming corner that has shown to me and to a lot of Cowboys fans that he is not up to par to be a starter. But I do expect Jordan Lewis to be the starter if it is between the two. Anthony Brown is coming off an injury. Jordan Lewis coming off a good year. I think you see more of Lewis. You see more of Chidobe Awuzie improving, since right now, Chidobe Awuzie is the number 1 corner for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, along with that, they did also sign Maurice Kennedy to a 1-year, just over $1 million contract, formerly with the Jets, and then before that, the Ravens last season. And to a lot of people, even to some of my friends, and no disrespect, they were saying, look, I don't know this guy. I have absolutely no idea who this is. This is a nobody. I want to be a little optimistic on this part because of the fact that there is a new system coming to the Cowboys defense. Looking at Kennedy's stats, not too bad. He is not at the bottom tier of corners in the rankings. He's, kind of just above average. When I was reading into it, and a lot of these stories were saying, is that Mike McCarthy did go out and get this guy because of the fact that he's looking at the analytics. So he is looking at stats, most importantly, and he's seeing who would fit that system better for Harris and Lindquist than in Rod Marinelli, or just in general, any type of defense. You're not going for the big name. You're going for a guy that fits your system a lot more. And analytics is one of the most important things that Mike McCarthy is going to look into for this upcoming season. That's the whole reason why he took that year off after getting fired by the Green Bay Packers. If you haven't seen the documentary of Mike McCarthy and showing the whole part, like the whole man cave essentially of his basement, to where he has film upon film talking about how much analytics has taken over the league and how he was not up to par in the analytics portion. He thought it was not legit. He thought the old school style of running an offense, running a team in general, was the way to win football games. And he realized after doing it for so many years in Green Bay that it just did not fit to what the NFL is growing into. The NFL and sports in general, it is growing upon analytics. It's all about the numbers. So how does Mike McCarthy learn that? He quarantines himself, lack of a better term now in these days. He quarantines himself into a basement and puts together a coaching staff, puts together a group of coaches, former GMs, former front office people in the NFL, and grows a system to where they perfect analytics. They perfect the idea of fundamentals and using the numbers in their favor to grow the perfect team that can move into not just one championship, but multiple championships. And the interview that he did in that documentary is very emotional and heartwarming because he talks about how important this is to him to get back to glory in the NFL. And this is an example of it, is signing a guy like Maurice, who nobody really knows about. However, it's all about the numbers for him. They're not looking at the name. They're not looking at the body type. They're looking at, does this guy with his numbers fit our system? Yes, then let's sign him. No doubt about it. Yes, we can get better corners. We could have gotten a guy like Chris Harris, that recently got signed by the Chargers, I believe. Don't quote me on that. I'll look into it later and then you're getting rid of some of your guys. There's still some corners around the league that you probably could have gotten, but they're going to cost you a lot more money. Kennedy, just over $1 million. It's just a matter of when we get into the season and we see it go down, we see the player play on the field. That's the only judgment we have, because right now it's not a bad signing, it's not a great signing, it's just there, and that's just what it is. We can talk about great names, great fits, and this is just one of them that falls into it where you're like, we'll see, right? We'll see. Another signing is going to be on the defensive side as well. Joe Thomas, who is the linebacker. He's been with the Cowboys for around 2 years. Got signed from the Cleveland Browns. Signed a 1-year. The money details are undisclosed right now. Was brought in to be a depth guy with the injuries going on with Sean Lee and a very young core of Lane Vander Esch, Jalen Smith. Joe Thomas was brought into the Cowboys for a veteran experience, veteran workmanship, and not a high price, but also depth. He also helps a lot with the special teams that they used him a lot for last year, but he is known for depth. He did get hurt at the end of the second part of the season last year with a knee injury, and that was huge for the Cowboys. I think there were some games where Sean Lee and him took over, and it was apparent that they could take over that linebacker core if these young guys aren't feeling healthy or not feeling strong enough to, or just having a bad game, Sean Lee played all of his games last season. They just signed him to a 1-year deal. They also signed Joe Thomas to another 1-year deal. So the depth is still there for the linebacker core. Lane Vander Esch's neck injury from last year, his condition, I hope it's all good, all better, since they didn't play in the playoffs. That was the whole point of him staying out for so many games, was the fact they want to keep him for that playoff push, which never came. He's got plenty of time to rest, and I hope that he's healthy, ready to go. He's still got a few months before anything happens, and for the time being, there's nothing that can really happen. So Jalen Smith hopes to have a bounce-back year after really a slump, in my eyes, that really is uncharacteristic of what Jalen Smith is as a player. So I think Joe Thomas, bringing him back for another year, is a solid move by the Dallas Cowboys. And actually, I didn't even think about this before I wrote his name down, but I read an article where he actually started his career in the NFL with the Green Bay Packers and Mike McCarthy. So he's going to be reuniting with him for the second time in his career, which I love because he actually played some really good years of his career in Green Bay before moving on to the Cleveland Browns, and he did some good things there. And then he's had a solid stint with the Cowboys so far. So I think this is a great signing by the Dallas Cowboys to re-sign him and keep him on the depth chart. It's going to be interesting to see what the Cowboys do with Malcolm Smith. Now, the MVP from the Super Bowl when he was with the Seahawks, played some good football toward the second part of the season last year, and he was there for the playoff push to give him experience too, along with the Lane Vander Esch injury. I would like for them to keep him, but I would expect a lot of the market to look into Malcolm Smith and want to bring him in as a solid veteran and still a playmaking ability type of linebacker that is hard to find in the NFL. Maybe like a team like Carolina, who just lost Luke Kuechly, they can bring in a Malcolm Smith that can be the leader and be the number one linebacker on that team. I expect someone to reach out to Malcolm Smith and try to pick him up. If I were to choose or predict where Malcolm Smith goes, it has to be more than half of that percentage in my eyes. Has to be that he's not going to stay with the Dallas Cowboys. If they do, great. I don't think they need him if they're going with Joe Thomas for that signing. I think that kind of talks about how Malcolm Smith will not get a contract from the Dallas Cowboys, because that can put 5 linebackers on the depth chart. They also need to look into Justin March, who has been a good depth guy as well, who is also using the special team. So it'll be interesting to see what the Cowboys do with Malcolm Smith. They also signed Kai Forbath, my man. Kicker, signed him to a 1-year deal. Don't know the money yet. He was perfect last year when they picked him up for Brett Maher. Okay. We just will forget that man forever. Okay? We won't talk about Brett Maher anymore on the podcast. I think this, ladies and gentlemen, this is the last time I will mention Brett Maher on the podcast forever. Well, unless we do a joke and we mention garbage cans or like trash cans, and then you got to bring them up, right? So Brett Maher. Yeah, okay, yeah, we're done. Oh God. Kai Forbath, 10 for 10 last year, came in, took over, and was the most consistent player probably for the Dallas Cowboys in the second part of the season, along with Dak Prescott. And he got his fair share of warm-ups and playing time last year because that offense toward the end was not looking good. I think this is a good signing. Signed for 1 year, so I don't know why the Cowboys really signed him for only 1 year unless they look to get a younger kicker in the future. I don't know. I feel like signing him to a multi-year deal would have been better. But, I mean, with kickers, you never know, right? It's probably going to be kind of cautious with this because of the fact that he was perfect last year. And they kind of did the same thing with Brett Maher. They saw a good portion of what Brett Maher can do. And there was glimpses of him being a solid replacement to Dan Bailey. Yet they were too aggressive and they signed him to a really high-paying dollar contract. And it went all downhill from there. So I would assume that's what the Cowboys are doing right now. Is signing him to a 1 year, see how he does this year. And if he does good, either he wants to stay with the Cowboys or depending on what he wants to do with his career. I would expect Kai Forbath to want to stay in the NFL for a couple more years at least, and it's hard to find a good kicker nowadays. So take 1 year to really decide on it, and then if he does good, then sign him to another multi-year deal. I would assume that's probably what the Cowboys are doing. Now, what's interesting as well is that Dan Bailey was a free agent this offseason, and he's still yet to find a team to sign with. He would like to stay with the Vikings, and the Vikings are showing mutual interest. There are some teams that are looking into him, and I'm surprised that the Cowboys did not want a reunion of Dan Bailey after kind of getting rid of him on the bad terms a few years ago when he still had a lot left in the tank. He's had a really good career overall with the Cowboys and had some good moments in Minnesota. He was a very consistent kicker there. I miss him so much. I mean, I was kind of surprised. I really was, and I think a lot of people will be surprised. If I told you that Dan Bailey's a free agent before Kai Forbath was signed, I would have been like, oh, he's going back to the Cowboys. Jerry kind of messed up. Steven kind of messed up on that aspect, and it would be nice to have Dan Bailey back and retire as a Cowboy because of him being so successful and going down as one of the greatest kickers, not only in the Cowboys' history, but of all time, really. So, all in all, though, Kai Forbath being signed, I'm all for it. And lastly, the one signing you guys have been waiting for and to talk about is Ha Clinton Dix, safety that was from Chicago. He got drafted by the Green Bay Packers, but played his last 2 seasons with the Chicago Bears, and I'll just let the video speak for itself. So let's just say, worst case scenario, they want to go for free agency help. So let's start with free agency itself. In safety, there's actually some pretty good names that I saw in the top 100 free agents for the 2020 season. First up, like I just mentioned with the Bears and Robert Quinn, Ha Clinton Dix is going to be a free agent. And what I've seen since he's been drafted from the Green Bay Packers, he had his best season in 2016 with some good numbers on your interceptions and really prospered from his first season in 2015, sophomore year, looked really good, and then moved on to the Chicago Bears. If you can get him for a really good contract, that is an upgrade from anybody else that you have, a good name around the league that is respected and can come in with experience with defensive coordinators like Dom Capers, or also when he was with the Chicago Bears in Chuck Pagano. Now you have a guy in Mike Nolan and also an improved coaching staff in the secondary. You can do a lot of great things with Ha Clinton Dix. Yep, people. It's just what I do. Nothing special about it. I'm your Cowboys guy. I'm your football guy. I'm your sports guy. The first name that I wrote down when I was looking at the free agents and seeing who's available at safety, because the Cowboys do need help at safety once they got rid of Jeff Heath and up in the air of really who's going to be the starter at free safety or strong safety. And the first name that popped up in that list and really stood out to me as far as who the Cowboys can go after is Clinton Dix. I love this guy. Out of Alabama, been in the league since like 2015, 2014. Was drafted by Mike McCarthy in the Green Bay Packers. Had a great stint there and moved on to Chicago as their starting safety, and really took over for that defense along with Chuck Pagano. And working under great defensive coordinators like we just mentioned in that video, Dom Capers and Chuck Pagano, playing his best year in 2018 and had a really good 2019 year. They have the stat to where Ha Clinton Dix has more interceptions in his career than the entire Cowboy secondary combined. I'm okay with that. I'm okay because they recognized the fact that turnovers are a big loss the Cowboys have not really focused in on or accomplished in the last, say, 10 years under Rod Marinelli. And now getting more guys that are creating more turnovers, but also having to replace a lockdown defender like Byron Jones, is hard to do when you have a strong, respected, very intimidating safety like Ha Clinton Dix, and you get him for a really good deal. Same idea like you do for Gerald McCoy. The Clinton Dix contract is for 1 year. I wish it would have been for more. But that's okay. $4 million. $4 million for a Pro Bowl caliber type of safety like Ha Clinton Dix is hard to find nowadays for cheap. But the man, I don't know what Jerry and Steven are doing, but they're signing guys on really good contracts. Yes, they're picking up all these guys, and they still have a lot of work to do. But when you're doing it smart, you're doing it intelligently with guys like Clinton Dix, Gerald McCoy, and you're signing them to deals that don't hurt your salary cap. They actually benefit from it for being 1 year, 2 year, whatever. Gerald McCoy for 3 years, phenomenal. Clinton Dix for 1 year. I'm okay with that. Wish it was a little bit more because we do need that safety help for the time being. And this kind of opens up a lot of curiosity as far as what the Cowboys can do in the draft. Now, they picked up Gerald McCoy. Do they still go for the edge rusher and a guy like we mentioned on the last podcast on the Roundup? You got different guys that can be prototypes, that can be projects for Jim Tomsula and Mike Nolan. Or you can stick to what you have right now in Dorrance Armstrong. You have Gerald McCoy on the inside. You still got guys like Christian Covington that you can sign, Daniel Ross, Antoine Woods, and then you have DeMarcus Lawrence, Kerry Hyder that you can still sign. The depth in that defensive line is now coming together a little bit better, and also the depth in the secondary. Depth is a big thing, and that was a case for Rod Marinelli and Chris Richard to have depth. But now you have even smarter minds taking care of that as well with Jim Tomsula, Al Harris, Lindquist, Mike Nolan. I trust these guys a lot more than I would Jason Garrett, Rod Marinelli, and Chris Richard. These are good strides to be better. And Ha Clinton Dix is a big name for a really good price that the Cowboys have done. And I'm all for it. I'm excited. It's a reunion with Mike McCarthy, so he sees the potential in him. Now we can get the most out of Ha Clinton Dix that Mike McCarthy has now adjusted to in the analytics. So now it's the best of both worlds. Now Clinton Dix has plenty of experience at a good age, and also Mike McCarthy, who has learned to adapt to a new system, a new scheme, along with Mike Nolan, have the perfect setup for all of these guys and really get the most out of them. I'm really excited for that signing. I'll probably do a TikTok on it. I'll be honest. I'm quarantined. I got to do TikToks. I have to. But I'm really excited. That was a really good signing. I was super excited last night when I got the official report that he was agreeing to sign with the Dallas Cowboys, and I even saw the numbers pull up for 1 year, $4 million. I was ecstatic because I think that's a really good contract. I think it's a really good signing by the Dallas Cowboys. A huge improvement from Jeff Heath. So does this mean that they're still going to go for Grant Delpit or Xavier McKinney in the draft? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe they go with the edge rusher. Maybe they go with another inside tackle, or they get really high on a corner and they go big in the first round. But this, God damn it, Jerry, you've done it again to where you get me excited, and Remember me? Remember like pre-video, pre-YouTube Bubblettes where I did the episode where I'd completely given up on the Dallas Cowboys because they didn't make the playoffs and they had so many free agents that were going to go up for this offseason, and I was done. I was defeated. And look at me now. I've done 3 episodes for the Cowboys in the last week? 3, 2, I don't know. And this is like my 4th podcast of the week. I don't know what to do, man. I'm excited. I really am. I'm ecstatic that they signed him, and they're smart about it. Good things are being done by Mike McCarthy, by Mike Nolan. I love this coaching staff so far. Oh, I'm gonna get my heart broken again. Damn it. I'm excited though. I can't deny it, man. That's like I'm done. I just can't. I can't hide the excitement, you know. Ha Clinton Dix. You know. All right, people. That's going to do it for this episode of the Bubble Let Sport podcast. I hope you enjoyed this update that I did on Cowboys free agency. Once again, plenty more episodes to come in these next few days. And it's YouTube channel content. It's Spotify, Apple Podcast content. It's what you need at this time in this dire situation. So I hope you're enjoying this. I hope that you're supporting me as much as you can. I appreciate all the support on Instagram and Twitter. You know, everyone's just being really supportive, and I can't tell you enough how it is, especially in times like this, to where I've had my moments this last few weeks, or I had my moment in the last few days, honestly, to where I didn't feel my best, and I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate all the love and support that you've given me. And, you know, I just thank you so much. So see you next time on the Bubble Let Sports podcast.
Now do you keep it classy or you keep it ratchet? For the man with the magic. Now who is he? It's the boy Bubba. Let's coming through. Hella clutch, flawless, can't be touched. It's a boy Bubba. I need that hot take. I need the truth and everything that is not fake. So tell me who's the GOAT, I'll tell you who's not great. And which team always make you go right way. The Bubble Sports Podcast.